And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. How's everyone doing this evening? Thank you so much for joining me. I get my ears on here. Our topic today is how does the Africans in South Carolina preserve their culture? And I wanted to bring this topic to you because it is a great cry out by the African Americans, or shall I say, the indigenous Black people, to be in search of their roots. And for the longest, we were really in search of our roots when we were sending our DNA out to the laboratories looking to find out where we're from. But now more so than ever, us indigenous Aborigines are really, really looking high and low for ourselves. Hold on, let me go and grab my plugs here so we can get better perception. Get right back. Okay, got a little bit more. Okay, how's everybody doing today? Welcome. You've got your Omega 7 Live coming at you. And we are live here on YouTube channel this evening. Okay, now we are a little bit better. Okay, now I want to pretty much ask that question again. How does the Africans in South Carolina have they been able to preserve their heritage? And I have never been to South Carolina, but that is my next desired place to travel, to research it, to find my own heritage in North Carolina. Now, I like to say that we are creatures of habit, and we want to believe that all of us are from the same place when we say that, okay, hold on for 1 minute here. Okay. When we say that we are from the Americans, North Carolina, we're from North America, we don't ever think about the fact that Sierra Leone was an area that actually brought a lot of slaves over to the North Americans, and they fought off the wars. The Geechee Gullah and the Creole people fought off the wars, and they maintained their heritage, they maintained their cultures, and they actually were able to keep their customs that came from Sierra Leone. They were direct descendants from Sierra Leone. They came off the ship. For those people that keep saying, oh, we were always here, we've always been here, that's not true for the Geechee Gullah and the Creole people. They were not always here. They were transported just like our transatlantic slave trade, where there were two gentlemen that entered into the slave trade right from Sierra Leone, and they became very rich people trading slaves from Sierra Leone, bringing them here to the South Carolinas. Now, the South Carolina people, they fought in a war, and they were victorious in their fighting. You must remember now that these Geechee Gullah people were down in the trenches where they had worked on the rice fields, and there were a lot of pestilence. And as I told you before, that the Caucasian were afraid that this would bring on malaria. They were very frightened by them fighting down in the trenches. And there were some backwater Geechee people, but they were able to sustain it and had no problem. And because of this, it kept out some of their intruders. Nevertheless, these were people directly descended from Sierra Leone. And the reason why I know this is because the president of Sierra Leone had made visits to meet with the actual Geechee Gullah people. They became united and connected, and there has been celebrations of the Geechee Gullah people over in Sierra Leone. As a matter of fact, they have united as one. And I don't know if that was a ritualistic thing where they are going to meet in the future year to year, or if the celebrations have continued, but I know they've had a celebration where they've embraced and they've reunited back with family members that might still be alive in Sierra Leone. Now, how did they preserve their heritage? Some would say they were backward people, but I say they were intelligent because they spoke two languages. They were able to maintain their culture and their heritage and their language. And they also set up one of the very first schools on the island. And on that island, they got their education, and the school is still there. They also built a resort out of that island right there in the Charleston area and South Carolina, Charleston. Well, I'm not certain if Charleston is in North Carolina or not. I don't want to, mix that up because I've never been there. I do know that in Charleston, they are planning to open the African American Museum, which is going to be opening in about 2 more years. And they're going to display the history and the tradition from Sierra Leone, talking about how Africans transitioned from Sierra Leone to the North Carolina or to the South Carolina area. Now, how did they preserve their heritage? With fear and trembling, I would believe. But one of the things is that they were a little bit different type of people. This was during the time when they wanted to make a decision to give them the 40 acres and a mule, and some of them would distribute this land, but then they reversed it back. But nevertheless, they ended up petitioning the state to allow them to be a part of the auctions where they can purchase the land that was up for auction. So they got a lot of that land with their own deeds from their ancestors, and their ancestors were able to purchase this property outright and own it. And for the longest, these Geechee Gullah people were left alone. They were isolated because no one wanted to go in that infested area where there were fleas and ticks and all kind of insects. So the white overseers gave the black Geechee Gullahs full control of supervising these so-called slaves that they had in captivity, but they were later freed and let go. So that area was freed land. So they were like the freedmen. But nevertheless, they had their rice fields, which they grew, and they lived off the rice, and that was their main staple. They had the island, which yield plenty of fresh fish, as well as their oysters. They were very big on the oysters, and what I understand, crabs, and anything from the sea you wanted, it was there. So they had plenty of seafood and rice. And then they made indigo ink, which was very popular, and they sold that and made a living from that. So they lived off the land, and they didn't have to worry about whether or not they had jobs or not, because they lived off the land. They cropped the land, had vegetation on the land for their gardens, and they grew their rice, and they were brought to the two Carolinas from Sierra Leone because of their skills in cultivating rice. No one else was cultivating rice the way they were. And the Caucasians wanted them here in the Carolinas to cultivate the rice. That's why they were brought here. So there's no mix up about whether or not they were slaves, whether or not they were here already. They were brought here, and it is documented that they were brought here. So they're direct descendants from Sierra Leone, and their family members can be connected back to Africa. So let's not get this twisted, because we've been getting all fiery arms about the fact that all of us were from here, from the Turtle Islands, and none of us came over on ships. Well, in the Carolinas, South Carolina, they came over on the ship, and a lot of them are living to tell the story. And my question is, how did they survive? And how did they maintain their history and their culture without having to go to war? Well, they went to war. They had to go to war, and they fought courageously. And they stood up against all of these wars that were going on, and they maintained their land. But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I would hate to tell you or be the bearer of bad news that a lot of Caucasians are going in and they're challenging them on their ancestors' deeds to the property. Because when they were handed this land down, it was set up on a deed contract, and it really was challenged. And now they're in court challenging it, and some white lawyers are coming in to want to buy the land from up under them, and they actually are building resorts there, very expensive resorts, and the property taxes is going up, and they can barely afford to buy any of those homes. So you know the Caucasians are selling it to their own, and they're taking over the land. I think that's the worst thing in the world that could have happened to these people, because they've owned the land for hundreds of years. They put a museum on the property. That property is prospering because they're making a profit from the actual museum and the tours that they give. Now, I understand that Queen Quet, she actually gives the tours. She gives the history of the language, where it came from. She's very, very intelligent, and she speaks 2 languages. And herein lies what I've been talking about the Ebonics being a regularized code, which is Geechee, similar to Geechee. And a lot of our children who have never been to Carolina and who have never had the opportunity to go to Sierra Leone are speaking a Patois, a form of broken English with a mixture of French and African, and it is a regularized language, and it has been. So our children in these schools have been speaking a form of Geechee and been penalized for it and put in special ed. So we really need to get a handle over more of our linguistics getting involved with our Geechee Gullah language and helping more people to decipher its content and how to speak the language. But nevertheless, our African people got to the Carolinas, and they were able to live on that land, live off the land, and benefit from the land and preserve the culture. They're still striving and fighting very hard now to maintain the culture. And what must we do to keep our culture intact? We must keep the languages intact, the foods that go with it, and we must also visit the Carolinas. I plan to visit the Carolinas and also research my grandmother, Lizzie Lilly, who is from North Carolina. I looked her up in the Census Bureau and found that she lived her life there in North Carolina. So I have a very personal interest for exploring the Carolinas, because if this is where my grandmother is from, I know she has a heritage with the customs and the traditions of North Carolina. Now, I would like to also say that when we think of keeping customs and tradition, we don't realize that these Geechee Gullahs, they kept the tradition of their African religion. They did not take too well to embracing Christianity. As a matter of fact, I understand that they had a minister to come over, and most of the African Americans were standoffish and did not want to be baptized or be a part of the Christian faith, because it actually did something. From what they explained in doing these editorials and documentaries, is that their customs that they brought over were the customs and the ways of their ancestors from Sierra Leone. They indicated that before sun up, they went into the woods and they prayed and meditated. And then during noontime, they went into the woods and meditated and prayed. And then finally, by the time the sun went down, they went into the woods and prayed again. And that was one of the customs of their African ancestors, that they found God in the woods. I know this because I have some relatives that believe the same thing. If you want to get to know God, you must go into the thick of things, into the woods to find God, because God is with nature. He is there. And they spent plenty of time, 3 times a day, raising the roof and praying. And they also had their religious buildings where they would go in and they would have something like a bembe, the praise and worshiping and exalting God. Now, we've taken that thing to another level. We've forgotten to meditate. We're not going anywhere in the habitat where we can find God in the woods, but we should be, because that's exactly where the ancestors say you can find God. Now, what allowed them not to get beaten and put into slavery? Because they fought back from the beginning. They put their dukes up and fought back. They went down in the swamps and double dared them to come down there to do anything to them, because they had the infested pestilence on their side, who God allowed them to use that to their advantage. So they were able to fight off the army several times in order to maintain their lifestyle, and they defended their lifestyle and they maintained it through fighting, picking up arms and fighting. And they were the only African settlers in America that were able to maintain their heritage and maintain their culture. And to this day, they still are maintaining their culture, but they're losing their land, people. God is in court fighting for them. A lot of us don't hear very much about it, and we don't even know it's happening. But there needs to be a great awakening of everyone stepping in to prevent these people who should have had the reparation, but didn't. Now, we know they're descendants from Sierra Leone. So they were brought here against their will. And now that we know they were, and we can put our finger on their ancestors, who they are, the government should be paying them for their displacement, because they're being displaced because they're going in with bulldozers and they are erecting all of these fine townhouses and duplexes and condominiums. And our people who are there from South Carolina and North Carolina cannot afford the time of day and cannot afford the tax raise that's going up. And it's costing them the problem of losing their homes and being without land. And you know, Geechee should never be without land. Just like they indicated, you cannot recreate new land. And once you lose that, it's gone. You have to go and find some more. Now, the Geechees are struggling, I understand, to stay on their land and their property. This should not be the final end of their chapter, with them losing their land. After all the ancestors did to fight to get that land, the government should step in and say something. Because why would you have developers coming in to sacred land? They're intruding on the Geechee Gullah's sacred land where they have their ancestors buried. And some of the land they can't even get into, the Geechee Gullah, to go in and fellowship and pay homage to their ancestors, because it's off limits to them, because people, outsiders, Caucasians, have come in and bought up a large portion of the land. But yet these Geechees struggle to maintain, to keep their heritage intact. And with festivals, there's a great festival that they have every year where they fellowship with Sierra Leone people and they reconnect, and the government has got involved in that. I think these are the people that's going to take us over the bridge. I think these are the people that's going to break the camel's back so that the real world will see exactly what freed Africans look like. But it's very vital that we should be able to see that there are other continents that have not been talked about. But Sierra Leone openly made a show of them openly, with their president coming out front to endorse the language and support it, because it is partially African language. Now, just because you think a few people are speaking backwards and that you can speak down on them, that does not mean you can steal their land. This is a hideous thing where so many so-called Caucasian people have gone over there, all in the name of bettering themselves. How are you going to better yourself on somebody else's land and property? It's not the way of the people, and nothing good could come out of that. So if you have family members in North Carolina or South Carolina, go down there, find out what's going on, and get involved, and make sure you understand that once that land is gone, that customs and tradition of those people are gone too. And we are not going to have that this time around. We're going to support them because they have held up the banner and been able to tell our story, which is still so near and dear to us. I thank you so much for listening in. You've been listening to Maddie Harvey's Baby Sister as I bring to you another segment from the Oracle Divination Network radio station. Please do follow the leader, go down below and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend about me and my historian background. Tell a friend to come in and subscribe too. And don't forget to leave a comment down below, okay? And follow me also on Facebook. Subscribe to my channel here and follow me on Facebook. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, but I love for you to follow me. I love for you to be a part of the tribe. Now, come on, you can do it. Be a part of the tribe and be able to find out what is going on in our history. Now, we have been back in our room talking about trying to get a little bit more clairvoyant and talking more about the paranormal. So we just did a show on the paranormal, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about Ifa. And I'd like to take a little bit of this time to tell you that Ifa will mend our broken heart. It is an African traditional faith. It's a way of life. It is not a religion, and it will show you the way of life so that you will have a consistent way of doing things. Now, I talked a little bit about the fact that the 16 Odus, what I want to tell you is that the 16 Odus will advance out to the 400 plus one, and also the positive side, and the 256 Odus, where you can learn this poetry, you can read it, memorize it, apply it to your life. And most priestesses can recite these Odus off the top of their head from memory. But what we want to get more into is head washings. And we want to get more young people dedicated to the traditions of African religion, so they will have a way of life, so we can save our youth, and teaching them more about prayer and going into the deep woods to say a prayer and being able to contact with the Most High who resides in all of us. And Ori is where God sits, and he sits on our head, and he follows us and maintains us in all that we do. But we must understand that through Oracle Divination Network, we're asking more priestesses to come in. We're asking more poets to come in because we want to hear what you have to say. And we want to keep in front of all of our people the fact that we must tap into our African traditional heritage and we must maintain it. Because if we don't, we will lose our customs and tradition. And we don't want to do that. That is part of the reason we have the Oracle Divination Network. Come out and visit us. We have our website up that is called montuenterprises.biz. You can go to that website. That is my music website. I am attempting to set up something where I can do a little bit more singing, rock feel with poetry right now. And some of the radio shows are on there that you can download. Please do come out and patronize me and watch me as I come back and renew myself into the music industry. I've been wanting to come back to music, but because of a job getting in the way, I've kind of put it on the back burner. And now that I'm retired, I can go to my first love and get involved in my traditional gospel singing. At one point, I was a little hesitant that I wasn't sure which venue I wanted to come back in, but the Spirit came to me and said, go with what you know. You know traditional gospel song. Bring that back and use that to be your platform. And as I use that to be my platform, God will bless it. And all music is from God, and he will give me more to sing. Today a man is somewhere proclaiming the good news, winning families to Jesus all around in his neighborhood. He tells them that God is able to make their house a home. He wants to win his world for Christ, but he can't do it alone. But each one can reach one. As we follow after Christ, we all can reach one. We each one can reach one. As we follow after Christ, we can reach one. The message is unchanging. Go ye into all the earth and share the love of Jesus far away and door to door. You see, just like somebody told you that Jesus is the way, you must tell someone who will tell someone until the whole world knows. And each one can reach one. As we follow after Christ, we all can reach one. We each one can reach one. As we follow after Christ, we can reach one. We each one can reach just one. Will you reach one today? We each one can reach one today. We each one can reach one. And the message is unchanging. And we each one can reach one. So, the army of Judah was paralyzed by fear when he heard that a mighty multitude was quickly drawing near. And when there was no deliverance, the victory would be had. And when you're falling on your knees, just know help is on the way. Pray on, for you are who the Lord's been looking for. Pray on your knees, for this is where the battle begins. Pretty soon you have the victory. Pray on. Now when Daniel faced the lions for worshiping the Lord, it seems there was no hope at all that would be in store. And when you find yourself on your knees, then help is on the way. Pray on, for you are who the Lord's been looking for. Pray on your knees, for this is where the battle it begins. Pretty soon you have the victory. Pray on. Pray on, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And please do come back and serenade my show and become a subscriber and ring the bell down below. It will tell you when I'm back on the air. Then you can follow the leader. Thank you so much and have a great evening. Odavo, Baba Booey to you, y'all.